Okay, what's going on, people? Ronan MMA. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be doing a full picks video for the entirety of UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Spivac. I was going to do two separate videos, break it down into prelims and main card, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to try and go a bit quicker because I don't think many people would click on just the prelims video. So, yeah. Before we get into that, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I just recently did a video on, actually yesterday, on Keon Kimura or something like that, debunking all of his claims of racism towards black fighters in the UFC and by its fan base. And just to preface, I did in fact upload it 10 hours before the MMA Guru did, and I think you should still watch it though if you've already watched his, because while we did make a lot of the same points, there were points in both of our videos which some of us missed, and one of the points that he made actually is going to be the reason why I do the fighter appreciation video tomorrow on who I'm going to be doing it on, because I forgot all about him myself. So, you know, it is what it is. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, first fight of the night, Tatsuro Taira versus Jesus Aguilar, and that'll be the only accent I do, because the rest will come off as severely, not kind. But Tatsuro Taira sounds way better when you say it like that, as opposed to just my accent, because it sounds badass, like some samurai name. He's a Japanese fighter too, so it's okay. Okay. I've gone with Tatsuro Taira here. The reason being, dude, when I was watching his fight against Vergara, maybe, who was it? Guy looks like John Dodson. Yeah, that's it, Vergara. Who missed weight, by the way. He did very well in that fight. And the one thing that was like worrying me early on as I went back and watched that fight was the jab of Vergara was landing almost at will on Tatsuro Taira, but he managed to make the adjustments necessary, and he shot for a takedown, timing the jab perfectly, and then, was able to dominate basically the rest of the fight. His transition from the choke to the armbar was very slick, so he's got mad ground skills, and he is also good on the feet, and he was landing as well, but he was just getting pieced up with that jab of Vergara, which he did adjust and address. So I'm confident in him. Jesus Aguilar is probably the biggest 5'4" person I've ever seen in my life, dude. But he's got like legitimate T-Rex arms, so he's gonna be at a severe reach disadvantage. He's explosive and powerful, but I don't see him getting it done. I think Taira could quite possibly get a finish in this fight, whether it be submission, probably a submission over a knockout. But yeah, first fight, Tatsuro Taira is my pick. Second fight, I'm going against the grain a little bit on this one. We got Jun-Young Park versus Dennis Tililin. Also a very fun name to say, dude. Tililin, that's how I would say it, even though he's not Russian, or even though that accent's not Russian. Beg my pardon, he is Russian. I'm going to be picking Tililin here, and I'm going to actually have to refer back to my notes because I can't remember why I did pick him. I just know that I have it circled on my phone. One thing about Jun-Young Park is dude's got good sub defense and ground defense. In total, he was able to survive with RoboCop on his back with a locked-in body triangle for 2 minutes. He was never accepting of the position that RoboCop was in. Like, he was constantly moving and fighting to get out of it. He does have a chin. He took some big shots on the ground. He goes full hog, like he's like an unfamous Michael Chandler, the way that he throws hooks, I swear. Because if I'm remembering correctly now, because he got finished in that RoboCop fight, I think if he would have thrown one uppercut or a real straight shot, one of the times where he had RoboCop hurt, he probably would have finished that fight. And it reminded me a lot of when I was watching Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler, because in that fight, Michael Chandler in the first round had Dustin Poirier hurt badly, which he hurt him with a straight right, and then continued to only throw hooks after that. And Dustin Poirier's got really good boxing defense. He rolls with punches. He's got a really good high elbow guard and is able to, a lot of those hooks just did not land cleanly, and Chandler couldn't get him out of there. Had he thrown one uppercut while Dustin was doing that style of defense, he may have been able to put him away. So I think that sometimes he remembers, that he can grapple and wrestle similar to Michael Chandler, but other times he just goes full redact, which I'm not gonna say the word this early in the video because I don't want to get it not as many people will see it, but don't ever go full redact. Okay, now Tulu Lip might be the underdog, but I just have this feeling, dude, the way that he fights reminds me kind of like Sean Strickland in a way, where he's gonna make you fight the fight he wants you to fight, and he's got a fucking chin to boot. Okay, and yeah, man, Sean Strickland makes you fight his fight, right? Dean Thomas tried to articulate that, but it came out in a very bad way, and he basically said that Sean Strickland sucks and he makes other people suck. I don't think that's fair. I think that Sean Strickland just makes you play his game, and because he spars so often in small gloves, it's just, he's better at his game than you are, and I have a feeling that this might look similar to the RoboCop fight, where he probably hurts Tululip, and whatever, but Tululip just doesn't let that shit slide, and finds himself like a second or third round KO. But I could be wrong. It's an underdog pick. We'll go for it. Why not? Moving on. Ji Young Kim versus Mandy Bohm. Initially I'd picked Mandy Bohm, whatever, I don't know. But I started going over because I was looking at Ji Young Kim's record, and I'm like, bro, 10-6. Like, we're creeping up on Angela Hill territory, but without the controversial split decisions, right? Like, they're just decision losses. But then I started looking at who they've lost to, and Ji Young Kim's loss record, her loss column, is much more impressive than Mandy Bohm's, and Ji Young Kim's not getting finished. But like, I have in my notes here, I'm pretty sure, dude, like, people might disagree with this, but I think that Ji Young Kim got robbed against Molly McCann. And then, we haven't seen Molly McCann lose since up until like Erin Blanchfield, who's pretty damn good as far as ladies go. So I'm picking Ji Young Kim here. I think that she's just level of competition, and her striking's more technical looking, and she just is much more impressive to watch fight. And Mandy Bohm has yet to have like an exciting fight whatsoever with girls that she probably should be able to get through pretty quickly. Ji Young Kim's fought like Antonita Shevchenko and tons of good chicks. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Ji Young Kim here. Moving on, I'm going to need to pull out my phone because I kind of forget who I chose in this one. The UFC's got a lot of shadow people. Man, they need to really update those pictures. This drives me crazy a little bit. We got Seong Choi versus Hyun Sung Park, and I'm going to go with Hyun Sung Park. And I hope that's how I say his name. I'm not doing that on purpose, dude. I truly don't know. Yeah. Man, there's a lot of names like that. This is going to be a tricky one. Jeez Louise. And I don't even remember why I picked him. I'm so sorry, but we'll just move on quickly. I know I picked him for good reasons. I think it's just overall athleticism and abilities, because I went back and watched a lot of their fights. A lot of these guys, I mean, dude, this is like a UFC. This card might have more UFC debuts on it than any card ever. A lot of these guys are coming from that show Road to the UFC, which is where I watched a lot of their, more recent fights, which is kind of a strange style. They do it similar to the Ultimate Fighter, where it's like 2 rounds, but the format is a tournament, and but they don't live in a house, I think, pretty sure. But yeah, just everything about him seemed to me like he was gonna get the job done. Now that I'm kind of jogging my memory, I think he also got quite a few finishes in his road to the UFC fights, whereas the other guy, Seong-guk Choi, was having some issues with some of his competitors. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Hyun Sung Park here. And I didn't write extensive notes, so I apologize for that. Next fight, Toshiomi Kazama versus Rinya Nakamura. I picked Rinya Nakamura. Fights like an absolute wild man. This dude can crack and mixes his striking up well with his takedowns and his clinch work. And I'm hoping, since his road to the UFC fights, that his striking defense has improved a bit, because the guy that he was fighting was like a plus 600. And while he did end up finishing him, he got touched up himself a bit in that first round there. And he was wearing more damage than his opponent was by the end of the fight, even though he got the KO. Because his nose got battered a bit. He was bleeding. I think he should be able to finish Kazama, though. I think his finishing capabilities are much better. And if he's improved, which he should, theoretically speaking, because the guy's 2-0 professionally, right? And he's very young. He should be making large improvements in between the times that we were seeing him. So I think he should be able to get it done. Moving on. Ji Young Lee versus Yiza. I picked Ji Young Lee in this one. And I can't remember why, but I think it was similar to the guy. Dude, I should have kept better notes, man. Yeah, there's just so many guys that are like new and don't have a lot of fights to go off of, so I was this is kind of a risky card to pick, because it's not like I'm ultra familiar with a lot of these guys. And if we're to believe the UFC, which I know that their website cannot be updated from time to time, they're both 2-0. So we got 2 young dudes, and this may sound like bad, but I don't really give a shit. I feel like, just based off of my experience watching UFC fights and MMA fights in general, South Korean fighters have much better chins than Chinese fighters. And there may be somebody who can think of an example who's going to go throw one in, like the Leech. Dude's tough as nails. Totally, right? But then we got guys like Do-Ho Choi, the Korean zombie. Like, just a bunch of Korean fighters that are absolute savages. And I think that was probably some of the basis for why I picked him. And technically speaking, I think he's better too. He was also getting pretty quick finishes in his fights. We're moving on to Serghei versus Ansu Jubli. Except he's Indian, so I don't know why I said it like that. Fuck, man. This is like another one, dude. I hate to be that guy. There's not a lot of East Indian fighters, or Indian fighters, period, in the UFC. So whenever one comes around, it's kind of like a big deal. These guys, if we're to believe the UFC professional record, 2-0 and 1-0, I just don't think that Ansul Jubli is the Indian guy to like break into the UFC in any sort of meaningful way. He got hit a lot in his fight, and all these guys at some point remind me of Michael Chandler, which goes to show you that Michael Chandler's fight IQ needs some serious work, okay? Because you're fighting like a guy that's 1-0. In Michael Chandler's fight versus Justin Gaethje, he, in the 3rd round, was infuriating me, because I'm like, buddy, go forward, and don't just go forward waving dudes on and like, trash talking and spitting blood and whatever else. Like, you need to actually go hit the guy. And it's just too much tomfoolery when you're when you're losing. And Anshul Jubilee kind of did the same thing. Jubilee, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I'm sorry if I'm not. But while he's getting bopped in the face, he's just having a good old time. And it's like, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And Jekka Serghei had extremely... Jesus, man, had an extremely impressive performance. I am like very low energy, and I apologize for this. We need to wake up. Let's go. Okay, so Jekka Serghei, probably by first round KO. Welterweight day. Okay, we're moving on. Yakasu Kinoshita versus Adam Fugit. Bro, I was gonna pick Adam Fugit for a bit, but then I thought about it, and Yusaku Kinoshita looks less technical than he actually is. The dude has to make up a lot of distance because he also has T-Rex arms. Like insane. He's 6 foot tall and his reach is... Oh wait, no. Really? He's 6 feet tall. Okay, whatever. So all these guys just have massive ape indexes then, because 72 inches is a normal reach for 6 feet. And he's got 71.5, whereas this Fugit dude's got 6'1", and he's 77 inch. And I think the guy that Kinoshita fought in the Contender Series also had a massive reach advantage on him as well, but he is extremely powerful. He got hit a couple times in his fight, but, you know, he managed to get the KO, and it was pretty brutal. And if I'm not mistaken, it was in the 3rd round, which means he's still packing some heat in the later rounds, so he's not getting tired. Adam Fugit, the fight that I was, like, most impressed by was a loss, which was, he was fighting that young Ecuadorian dude, Morales, who is, like, an absolute hype train, and is... for good reason. Like, the dude's clearly good. And he was managing to push a pace in that fight, but the problem was like he gassed out from his pace before his opponent did, right? So he still ended up getting finished. I thought he was actually going to end up turning the tables in that fight and getting the job done, just because that kid was so young, hadn't really experienced any meaningful adversity, and was just finishing dudes like crazy. And then, you know, Fugit ended up getting finished. Fugit, whatever. Fugit sounds better. I think that we're going to see a finish here from Yusaku Kinoshita. Probably. Maybe second, 3rd round. Fugit might be able to withstand and make it look like it's going to be a fight for the first 6-7 minutes, but I think that eventually Yusaku Kinoshita finds a shot, because his KO wasn't even like some just crazy lunging bullshit shot. It was like perfect straight left hand, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, moving on. Do Ho Choi versus Kyle Nelson. Man, I really wish I could go with my countryman here, but I can't, because I have to look at things objectively. And unfortunately, Kyle Nelson has lost to some extremely subpar competition. Do Ho Choi's losses in comparison are like miles and miles above, much like Ji Young Kim earlier. Like we're talking about like Jeremy Stevens, Cub Swanson, you know, dudes that UFC veterans are respected by a lot. I've had a lot of crazy fights, you know, and not to mention, Do Ho Choi's pretty young, okay, and he hasn't fought in, I think, at least 4 years. Maybe he had to go do like military service or something like that, and so he's gonna be refreshed, right? Hasn't taken damage in a good long time. And Kyle Nelson, though from a province that I extremely dislike, is Canadian, and I wish I could pick him, but I can't because he's older, and I highly doubt he will have made like leaps and bounds improvements. And I just, every fight I watch of his, I'm pretty underwhelmed. I think that he's like slightly underrated in overall capabilities. Like he does everything kind of well, but I could see Ho Choi getting a KO here. Big coming back party, and yeah, hopefully he looks good actually, because it's been a while since we've seen Ho Choi, and I quite like watching him fight. Moving on, Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov. Man, if this fight took place 3 years ago, I might be picking Blagoy. That guy is such a savage, man. Like, he deserves more appreciation. It's too bad that he spent so much time outside the UFC. That big stab scar in the middle of his chest is just wild, my guy. Like, goddamn, dude is a savage. But, yeah, I think Marcin Tybura, whatever, probably just gets this one done. I don't know if he'll finish, but he'll probably just beat the brakes off of him for like 3 rounds. He might end up finishing him, who knows. But man, when is Blagoy gonna retire? He truly is inspiring. But yeah, again, if this was a few years ago, I'd probably go the other way. I'd probably pick Blagoy just because he's a tricky sumbitch and he's tough as nails. That's why Martin probably won't get the finish. Tybura is not going to be able to knock Blagoy out. He's like one of the toughest individuals on this roster that people forget about. Okay, moving on. Da Ung Jung versus Devin Clark. Man, I'm going to go with Da Ung Jung here. I don't think Devin Clark was cut out for the UFC. I don't remember if he got in on a Contender Series fight or what happened. I think that he's taken a lot of damage. You know, his mouth, that was disgusting. That was like brutal. His teeth were just coming out with his mouth guard. And Da Ung Jung is good and hasn't taken the same level of damage. And, yeah, man, their records are, much different. Means I don't know, man. I don't see Devin Clark getting much further in the UFC than he's already gotten. So, it is what it is. Dude put on some crazy fights, and he is tough as nails, dude. Like, I respect the shit out of him. There are not a lot of guys, besides maybe Anthony Smith, who would just be cool with losing teeth in a fight, and then, his was way worse. That was so brutal, man. Those close-up shots of him, my word. But yeah, dude, I think that Da Ung Jung's gonna get it done. From a betting perspective, I don't know that I would play this one much just because he's a minus 245, and this is MMA, anything could happen, so I don't know. But just for a picks, I'm going with Da Ung Jung. Okay, now this one had me going back and forth for a while. I had finished picking all these other fights a couple days ago. I was tossing and turning on the Derrick Lewis one, man, because it's Derrick Lewis, and I don't know why. Now, this is going to sound silly because, like, Serghei Spivak is not a striker. He's known for his grappling capabilities, but I could see this one going like the Travis Brown fight, in the sense that Travis Brown probably, should have won that fight if we're just going technique for technique, and had a lot of success against Derrick Lewis early on in that fight as well, hurting Lewis to the body and all that jazz. And then just out of nowhere got KO'd. And I know that that's the story of a lot of Derrick Lewis fights, but maybe it's because he kind of looks like Travis Brown without the beard. I don't know why it made me think of that fight, but when I was watching him on the feet, which is rude because Travis Brown could fight on the feet, so I don't know why I would be comparing these two. But if you look at the records and who they've lost to, I'm sorry, that was disgusting, by the way, but that's all right. Derrick Lewis has lost to, like, the best in the division, and he's finished guys, like, twice. I mean, dude, Curtis Blades stuffs his takedowns and then flatlines him dead Mortal Kombat style with an uppercut. Dude. And then JDS too. Man, I got brain fog this morning. I apologize for this. You know, and then the dudes that he's getting finished against on the ground are like DC, who is an incredible grappler, obviously, which is Serghei Spivac's area of expertise. But Serghei Spivac has looked as good as he's looked against extremely subpar competition. I mean, dude. Yeah, for you to out-grapple Derrick or fucking Greg Hardy the way that you did is good and all, but DC did it to like everybody except John Jones, and DC did it to Derrick Lewis, and there's not a lot of guys that keep Derrick Lewis on the mat, dude. Derrick Lewis just stands up when he feels like it, and DC's like, no you're not, right, and finished him. But I mean, most guys Derrick Lewis just stands up against, and this really to me seems like a fight where Derrick Lewis gets a KO win if he shows up and doesn't drop out with a fucking stomachache or whatever the hell's been going on with him. But yeah, man, Serghei Spivac has looked better in his more recent fights, but the competition that he's been given in his more recent fights are not great, and they might not even be as good as like the competition that he was fighting earlier on, where he was not looking so good against, you know. Like, am I misremembering, or did Tai Tuivasa KO Serghei Spivak? I could be out of my goddamn fucking mind right now, but I'm going to quickly check that. This video is not very exciting. I do apologize, but, you know, it is what it is. Go watch the one that I did yesterday, because I was on fire on that one. Lost a decision to Marcin Tybura. Oh, he submitted Tai Tuivasa with an arm triangle. Okay, dude, he lost to Walt Harris. A TKO in 2019. So, this is what I'm talking about. Like, he had won a bunch in a row on his way to the UFC. First fight in the UFC is against Walt Harris, who we now know is not, you know, it sucks what happened to him, and that's probably going to be a narrative for why his career went into the dumps, but it's a technical issue. A lot of these guys that come from football just don't have it, man. And as much as Schaub likes to talk about how people don't know real athletes, and that dudes that have to participate in the NFL Combine are superior athletes to any of these men in the UFC, like, he's just fucking retarded, okay? Walt Harris is not very good, and he knocked this dude out. And then this guy beats Tai Tuivasa, and so this was in 2019 before Tai's recent, you know, resurgence, where he's looked really good up until the last two, which, fuck, those were brutal. He probably should have taken more time off in between. And also, he's not losing to shit dudes. But so a bit of a checkered past here at the beginning of the UFC. We got his Walt Harris TKO, and then he subs Tai, and then he loses to Marcin Tybura. And then he starts getting dudes who nobody's really heard of. And he barely beat Alexei Olenek, who's like old as shit, dude. Like, I know it was a unanimous decision, but Alexei Olenek was able to get him down in that fight, was able to get back up, gave him some trouble and scramble. So, and Alexei Olenek's pretty undersized for the heavyweight division, especially compared to a guy in Derrick Lewis who is like fucking giant, and recently looks like he's lost some weight, but has you know, historically had to cut weight. And then he loses to Tom Aspinall. No shame in that, because Tom Aspinall's great, like very good. And then, you know, TKO's Greg Hardy, and TKO's Augusto Sakai, who is also not that great. You know, Augusto Sakai lost to Alistair Overeem at the very end of Overeem's career, when Overeem was being like, oh, I'm a grappler now. Hey guys, I'm a grappler now who eats horse meat. So, yeah, we're not done yet. That's all I think of when I think of Alistair Overeem. But so, with all that being said, dude, I think I gotta go Derrick Lewis on this one. It's a good value also for an underdog fighter on here, because if Derrick Lewis is ever an underdog, it's probably like not a bad idea to just throw $20 on him or whatever, you know. if you're not trying to bet like real money and you're just trying to have fun, I mean, he's probably the livest of live dogs ever, out of any card ever. Like, whenever he's an underdog, he always has a chance. You can't count him out. And I just don't see Serghei Spivak. He is so vulnerable on the feet, man. He's like a baby on the feet. And Derrick Lewis isn't super technical, but it's just that he just has to land one shot. And also, I shouldn't even say that he's not super technical, because that Curtis Blades shot, man, he set that up, and he was being real patient, waiting for it, and then he got it. And so, good on him. So yeah, man, this one took me days to literally, because I was like, fuck, man, like, on paper, skill for skill, you would think Serghei Spivak is just technique-wise better, but he's not on the feet, and, it's cliche, but every fight starts on the feet. So Serghei Spivak has a less direct path to victory, whereas Derrick Lewis is like, you can shoot all you want, I'm gonna fucking shovel uppercut your face off and send you to the shadow realm. I really hope he does, because otherwise, dude, Derrick Lewis is not, his career is not looking great, and I love Derrick Lewis, and I would love for him to get a victory. Let's take a look at his recent record. Because, man, he was so much fun when he was he was one of my examples that I used to refute Kion Komura's dumb fuck video on, racism against black fighters, because every fucking person that is a fan of the UFC and watches the UFC loves Derrick Lewis, so shut the fuck up with that shit, bro. So, he didn't beat Junior Dos Santos, by the way. I'm sorry, that was misinformation. He KO'd Alexei Olenek, though, and he KO'd Curtis Blades. And he beat Francis Ngannou, so fuck all y'all disliking my Francis Ngannou video. Derrick Lewis is the best heavyweight in the world right now. That's it. Done deal. Can't argue with it. It was a joke, by the way. So, lost to Serghei, and then he beats Chris Daukaus, but who wouldn't? And then lost to Tai Tuivasa, which was a bad one. And this last one by Serghei Pavlovich was a bad one, too. But just look at those last four opponents, man. Serghei may very well be the actual, unironic, best heavyweight in the world, depending on what you think of the decision in that fight. I tend to kind of side with Serghei, simply because I don't think that you can just use, heavy breathing to win, but that's all right. And then Tai Tuivasa, what the fuck, and Serghei Pavlovich. Serghei Pavlovich is incredible right now, on an absolute tear, and Tai Tuivasa was too up until this point. Dude, that KO against Derrick Lewis is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I never thought I would see Derrick get flatlined like that, but yeah, sorry, we got off track here. Derrick Lewis is my last pick. Obviously by KO. He ain't winning a 5-round decision if his life depended on it, because he would shit his pants before he got there. And yeah, so should be a decent fight card. I have a feeling that this card's not one of those ones with great name value. It's got a lot of young guys making their UFC debut on. It's got a lot of guys with records that are like 2-0, 5-0, 6-0, shit like that. But I have a feeling this is going to be one of those cards where you're like, oh yeah, it's always the ones that have no name value that end up delivering like crazy. Like, I mean, bro, the co-main event in this fight is like, usually you've got, I mean, even on the last fight night, you had Dan Ige co-main event, right? Who's relatively well known. This co-main event is, I mean, Devin Clark's on the blue side of this co-main event. So anyways, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my fucking video I did yesterday, because it was great. And I made a lot of great points refuting and debunking Kion Komura's claims of racism. And as I said earlier, it's not verbatim all the same points that the MMA guru did. And I did my video 10 hours before his, so you can't accuse me of copying him. I was the first one to do a video on it, and I figured that not a lot of people would, but if anybody would, it would be him. So like and subscribe, and see ya later.